Hello and welcome back to another Blu-ray review, and this time we're going to be talking about the fourth and not final entry in the Line of Duty series, though for now it is at least the end of the Eureka releases of these four incredible films. And what a film to end on. This is In the Line of Duty 4, directed by Yuen Woo-ping, released in 1989. And as with all the films in this series, a film of many names. So I have so much to say about this film that I feel like I could just sit here for an hour just giddily recapping everything that happens in the film and how much I loved everything that happens in the film. But the film itself, 1989, like I said, In the Line of Duty 4, I think for the purposes of this video, just to stop me from just saying In the Line of Duty 4 every single time, I'm just going to call this film Witness. Now, I understand that as a title, it's pretty bland, but it is a subtitle, one of the subtitles of the film. So the official Cantonese title, roughly translated to English, is Royal Policewoman 4, Attacking the Witness Head-On. That's one of a couple of different literal translations of the original Cantonese title, but In the Line of Duty 4, Witness is a cool title, and it pretty much sums up what the story is about. It's about this witness and all the shit that happens around him, and just this one guy who's in the wrong place at the wrong time, and all of the stuff that he goes through in this big, epic crime plot that takes place in Seattle in America, and then over in Hong Kong, and it's... Man, yeah, I absolutely loved this film. So we pick up with essentially the same character that Cynthia Khan played in the Line of Duty 3, where she is a policewoman from Hong Kong, but it doesn't really, there's no continuity really between this and the previous film. And in fact, this was released internationally as In the Line of Duty, just flat. So that kind of continuity with this series is not really what you're kind of signing up for. But the film is about two police officers, basically, and it's an interesting running theme throughout all four films. One thing that does link them quite heavily, besides the fact that you have a female lead in all four films, it's about gunplay, girls with guns, as they kind of dubbed the subgenre, and, incredible action sequences, and usually some form of vengeance plot or some corruption within the police force. So, in this one, in fact, to go back to the beginning, if we go back to the first one, Yes, Madam, we had Michelle Yeoh partnered with Cynthia Rothrock. In the second one, Royal Warriors, we had Michelle Yeoh partnered with Hiroyuki Sanada, a Japanese police officer. And then in the Line of Duty 3, we had Cynthia Khan teaming up with Hiroshi Fujioka, another Japanese police officer. Now, in this one, Witness, we have Cynthia Khan once again as the female lead, and she is partnering with an American police officer played by Donnie Yen. Now, I would say this is by far the most interesting and captivating partnership across all four films, because there's actually conflict there. The only conflict that we had between any of these duos was really in the first film, Yes, Madam, where Cynthia Rothrock comes in, this British police officer, and her style is a little bit different than Michelle Yeoh's, but that's really as far as it stretches, and neither of them have really any character to speak of, and the conflict between them isn't really there at all, and they're pretty much on the same page right into that amazing final sequence at the end. But in this one, Donnie Yen and Cynthia Khan, they do not get on. They have two very different ways of doing their job. And they both kick ass, there's no doubt about that. But Donnie Yen, he is a vicious character in this film. He is a police officer who kicks first and asks questions later. Guilty until proven innocent, and the kind of the MacGuffin, I suppose, of the film is this microfilm, this roll of film where a photograph has been taken of a very important person, an American person, in an area where a big drug deal is going down, like a huge drug deal, a big operation in Seattle. And someone has taken a picture of this man, and this poor dock worker this Hong Kong man who's living in Seattle. He's been there for years. He's been working so hard to save up his money. He's still sending money back home to his mother in Hong Kong. He's doing all the right things. He's just got his green card. He's trying to support his brother who keeps messing up and is in debt with loan sharks and stuff. But there's one guy, Luke is his name, Luke Jai in the subtitles, and he gets wrapped up in it. And so he is given this film by the police officer who took it just as he's dying. And now suddenly this poor unassuming dock worker is the last guy seen with this roll of film. And now everyone is after him. The police are after him. The CIA are after him. There's a theme of corruption there. And it actually is based on true events of things that were happening that kind of came out where the CIA, I think it was, were involved in certain drug trades, and there was all this stuff going on, and there were different fingers in different pies, I think, but it was very much based in kind of a topical event that had been kind of unearthed and exposed at the time in the 1980s. And so there's a lot of people who are after this guy, and there are people who are after him who think that he's a guilty, bad guy. There's people who just want him dead because he's seen something that he shouldn't have. So he's the witness. And so this is where his path converges with Cynthia Khan and Donnie Yen. And Donnie Yen just beats the shit out of him, whereas Cynthia Khan is like, well, let's just arrest him and figure out what we can figure out. And they clash about this, and they have some heated conversations throughout the film where their ideologies go back and forth. And I don't want to name names, but there was some rumblings in one of the 3 commentaries on the Blu-ray of this film of, Donnie Yen and Cynthia Khan have zero chemistry together. They just don't work on screen together. And I completely disagree with that. There's a lot I disagree with in the commentaries, actually, in terms of just their opinions on the film. And I think that, it's not like it's this blazing white-hot chemistry or anything, but, I really do like the contrast between the two. And there's a specific scene where they're in Hong Kong. The first act of the film takes place in Seattle, and they filmed it in a little bit of it in Seattle and most of it in Vancouver. It seems like for the tax breaks, I suppose, or the more alluring budget price of shooting in Canada, I suppose, for the majority of those sequences in the first act of the film. Then they go to Hong Kong. They bring this character Luke over, who's played by this actor called Ewan. I'm trying to remember the Cantonese name, Ewan Yat Shaw. So Ewan Yat Shaw, who's one of the brothers of the director of the film, Yuen Wu-ping. He's also known as Sonny Yuen, and he's also known as Simon Yuen Jr. He's the son of Simon Yuen, which is obviously the kind of English-ized name of the actor who plays Jackie Chan's master in Drunken Master. There's all these different connections and things going on, and I'm only just trying to wrap my brain around them. But this actor who plays the witness, we'll call him, I don't know, Ewan Yat Shaw, Simon Yuen. We'll just call him Simon Yuen just for the ease of me not trying to focus on the pronunciation every single time, I suppose. So Simon Yuen Jr., he plays this witness, Luke, and he's been brought to Hong Kong, and he's been taken away. He's going to get taken back to America now, because I think he sneaks his way into Hong Kong, and then he gets kind of captured fairly early on by the police. They're going to send him back to America to extradite him, and he's been driven to the airport, I suppose, by Cynthia. And he's crying and blubbering in the back of the car, like, please just let me see my mother just for 5 minutes, or 4 minutes. 3 minutes would be enough. He just desperately wants to see his mother just this one last time. And she empathizes and believes that he's genuine, and when he's really tearful about this, so she stops at his mother's place against kind of protocol, and they arrive at his mother's apartment. Now he's handcuffed, and so he pleads with her, please, can you just take the handcuffs off for my mother's sake? So they go inside and they meet his mother, and then Donnie Yen is there waiting for him. He's got a cover story of why he's there, because he knew they'd probably come back there. And then I can't even remember now exactly how it happens, but I think it's Donnie Yen's doing. But Cynthia and Luke are handcuffed together. Okay, so now they've got to hide their kind of specific hands behind their backs, which makes it look like they're kind of standing in a warm embrace. And so his mother is like, "Oh, you got a girlfriend," and she goes along with it because she's trying to be nice. And then it just extrapolates from there, and it's this kind of this comedy of errors, and it took me back to the silent era, like a Buster Keaton sketch, where it just the misunderstandings keep layering on top of one another, until Luke's poor mother is like bringing out her engagement ring to put on Cynthia Khan's finger, and they've got to try to cover up the handcuffs. I thought that was I really enjoyed that. It's really the only overtly comedic piece in the film, I think, but I really enjoyed it. It was quite well done. And another part of one of the commentaries, the one with Michael Wong, he says that he thought the sequence ran too long and kind of was overstretched, but I disagree with that too. I thought it was perfectly paced and was really funny. And I really felt for this guy, because when his mother sees the handcuffs, and she's so disappointed that her son's been arrested, and it's just that in itself is devastating. But in the first act of the film, he's being pursued because he's this witness, and his brother is kind of cornered, and his brother decides to essentially sacrifice his own life to save Luke, and he gets killed. And I know that these are, some of the death scenes in these films can be a bit over the top, like, and it's a bit melodramatic in some of that kind of staging of characters dying and the action within. But I mean, it's not like I was going to get moved to tears by it, because again, I'm very much aware of the fact that I'm watching an exaggerated reality action movie, but I really felt for him. It didn't pull at my heartstrings to the point where I believed in it, but it was like, oh no, like I really was invested in a very short period of time in that brotherly relationship, and that he was really, they're both trying to save each other, and it's almost like a battle of like, no, I'm going to be the one to help you out, and he ends up sacrificing his life for his brother, and it's just, you really feel for this guy who, again, was just this hard worker who'd emigrated to America and had done everything by the book, and just by being in the wrong place at the wrong time, everything comes crashing down on top of him. His mother's disappointed. So I was just really invested in his story. And also Cynthia and Donnie getting on the same page again. So for me, the story is really great, and I was really wrapped up in it. And there's something I keep saying, but a really great action film needs to have a great story. It needs to have a really good story, a really good foundation in which all the action scenes are built around, in a way that creates a complete film where you're engaged in everything that's happening. And to me, I was engaged in every single scene in this film. And I thought that, Ewan Yatshaw, Simon Ewan Jr., was incredibly likable in this role, and he was good at the fight scenes as well, but not to the point where he seemed like he was a martial arts master. He was competent enough. But this was his last ever film role. And they allude I think in Frank Jang's commentary, he says that, it just wasn't, maybe it was the Mike Leader on the Venom commentary, where they're saying it just wasn't working with him. They were trying to make him a star and it just wasn't working out, and that was his last ever film role. I thought he did great. He was the heart and soul of the movie to me. And, Donnie and Cynthia were just perfect kind of, characters on either side of him. And I just really love that dynamic. Then on top of that, you have Michael Wong, who in Royal Warriors was such a kind of a doofus kind of goofy, he's like a old puppy loved up with Michelle Yeoh and stuff, and he's a bit of a dork, and in this film, he's a bit of a slimy character, and at first he's positioned as a good guy, and then you see very, very fairly early on that he has a different agenda altogether, and I thought that he actually did a really good job of conveying this guy who wasn't an out-and-out villain. He wasn't this cigar-chomping, fake mustache, like we see in these films. He was a really nuanced kind of villain, where he was doing what he thought was the right thing, and take no prisoners. Just if people need to die, people need to die. But he's ruthless in that sense. But I thought he was a good villain because he wasn't this one-note, one-sided character who's just a cartoony, again, cigar-chomping, laughing uproariously kind of scenery-chewing villain. And so that was an interesting twist I wasn't expecting, and that was really cool. So there's a couple of nice little twists in the film, which all get completely and thoroughly spoiled in the trailers, which we'll talk about in a little bit when we get to the extras. So I just felt like all these moving pieces were working really well together. Setting the first act of the film in Seattle gave it a nice kind of international flavor at the beginning. I thought initially it was going to be like the first 5 minutes. It's like the first half hour. Then you get to Hong Kong and there's a different change of scenery and there's these, nice locations. And as I've always said in these reviews of all these 80s Hong Kong action movies, I just love seeing Hong Kong in the 80s. And I thoroughly agree with whoever it was who I saw on Twitter was saying that Hong Kong in the 80s is one of the best, like, cities in a decade on film. Like, it just has that kind of flavor to it. And I actually been watching some more modern Hong Kong films, and it doesn't quite have the same effect. I don't know what it is. There's just something about Hong Kong in the 80s that I find incredibly enjoyable just to watch on film. But I'm kind of weird like that. I love just seeing real locations on celluloid. It's almost like a weird kind of, I don't know, not an obsession, but it's just a quirk that I have, I guess. Whenever I see a genuine real city, not like a stage or a set, and it's shot on film, and especially the older the movie is, like, it just really excites me. It's like an interesting peek into another world, because when you see reality on film, it's not quite as it is in reality. There's this, because of the 24 frames per second, it's that magic kind of motion look where it's not how we see things. It's slightly more cinematic and different, but you still get the feeling of the reality of it when it's a real location. Anyway, that aside, the film itself, I was so entertained. The fight scenes are incredible. I feel like Cynthia Khan was phenomenal in the film, and again, she gets some shit in the commentaries. And even Donnie Yen, in one of the interviews on the disc, he says that well, the one thing that she was good for, was that she had courage. Skill-wise, she wasn't too good, and she wasn't a martial artist. So I feel like everyone's ragging on Cynthia Khan. I thought she was great in the film. Yeah, she's doubled in quite a few of the shots, but there's two shots in the film where Cynthia Khan gets kicked in the face. Now, we've seen this before, I've seen it before in Hong Kong films, where they'll have like an intense fight sequence and they'll punctuate it with a slow motion close up of one of the actors getting a punch to the face. First time I saw it was Wheels on Meals with Jackie Chan versus Benny the Jet, and you just see the knee into the jaw and the face reverberating, and it's just like there's no magic there. It's literally just something getting hit in the face for real in slow motion, and you get to see all the detail of that. And there's two of those in this film where Cynthia Khan gets kicked in the face. Now, granted, she's not getting full-on belted, but like, it was almost uncomfortable for me to see it, because I was just imagining the scenario in which they were saying, okay, just stand there and we're just going to kick you in the face. And I actually showed Connie some of the fight scenes in this. I just wanted to share how awesome some of these sequences were. And I mentioned to her, like, oh, it almost makes me feel uncomfortable seeing this woman get kicked in the face. And Connie was like, oh, shut up. Connie was like, she's a martial artist. She can take it. She's tough. And I'm just like, okay. Although Connie was quite annoying in the constant pointing out, well, that's a stunt double. Well, that's a man doing that there. Well, he's not as tan as she. I was like, yeah, I get it. They're stunt doubles. If these actors did absolutely everything, they would probably be injured to the point of not being able to finish the movie. But also, it is noted that Cynthia Khan was not as adept as, say, Michelle Yeoh at doing a lot of the fights. But even Michelle Yeoh was doubled quite a lot for some of the more intense stuff and taking big falls and things. But I think there's some really impressive stuff that Cynthia does in the film in terms of moments of peril. So there's two key sequences that I thought were just really standout action set pieces in the film. First one is the ambulance chase. So this is a point where all of our main characters are inside an ambulance on this Hong Kong highway, and these guys show up. Again, they're after our witness, and they throw gas canisters inside the ambulance. Now everyone passes out except for Cynthia, who very, very quickly and wisely sticks a kind of gas mask over her face and gets some oxygen. Then she flips up onto the top of the ambulance, and she is fighting these guys. And the way she's hanging off this thing, and it's one of the most incredible scenes I've ever seen. And I get it. Like, there are tricks being used here. They're wired to the car, or maybe there's some undercranking going on, or, it's like little tricks that kind of make it seem more dangerous than it actually is. And once again, that someone in one of the commentaries was essentially viewing this scene and just being like, well, well, that's a stunt double there. The car isn't really moving that fast in that shot. Well, she's wired to the thing there. Well, that's not as dangerous as it might look. And I'm like, give her credit. Like, I just thought there's like the one where she's hanging out of the kind of window backwards. Like, it's a show-stopping performance from her. It's a brilliant job by all the stunt people who pulled this sequence off. And I remember seeing a clip of this when the releases were getting announced. I thought, holy shit, I can't wait to get to that scene. And it did not disappoint. I've watched it 3 times now, the whole sequence, and it shows you what you can do with great stunt people, with actors who can do their own stunts to a point where it really draws you into the scene. You can see that it's them doing it, but also the editing, and the staging of it, and the camera angles, and again, the tricks that are used. And I felt like they were being used almost in a negative way in one of the commentaries where it was like, well, that's, yeah. And I'm just, no, it's great. I thought it was fantastic. And then the other sequence with Cynthia Khan I thought was brilliant was this fight scene in a stairwell. Now, this is like an old beat down warehouse style building, and it's this long elevator shaft. And it's like, it's all open and bare, and there's like pipes and kind of balconies. There's bamboo kind of, facings to some of the edges going down through the elevator shaft, and Cynthia's fighting this woman. Yeah, it's a really well choreographed fight, but like, she's flying over the edge, she's dangling off this bamboo, and the woman's kicking it off, and it's snapping. And again, very clever kind of shot design and action direction. But I really felt it in my chest, that kind of the danger of what was going on there. And even with wires and stuff, I just thought that it was a fantastic sequence. And this film is just full of them. It really is. And there's these little mini fight sequences that are just little tasters of what's to come next. There are really brutal moments, not as brutal as in the previous film, but there's one where Luke and Michael Wong, they get kind of captured and tortured in an ice room. And, you could argue that Simon Ewan Jr. gets the worst of it because he gets sprayed down with water in this. And clearly there's no trickery going on here in terms of how cold that room was, but he's getting sprayed down and all this ice is forming on him. But I have to say, seeing Michael Wong, how he was attached to that ice block, that is a cruel way to go. And I've got to imagine there was some sort of padding going on there to kind of, preserve the potential future generations of Michael Wong's family. But that's, that was, well, actually, I suppose maybe putting them on ice would just preserve them even longer. I don't know where I was going with that. But, any guy out there will tell you that's a rough one to imagine that. It certainly goes through you. Anyway, so there's all these unique sequences like that. And there's this one fight scene with Donnie Yen and another American, I believe. And this is like, it's a weird one for me because the setting of it, I love. It's all these old stairwells and these like kind of like vine-filled alleys. I just love the look of it. It seems like something that's been around for hundreds of years. And it's just such a cool looking place. And at night as well, to set a fight sequence. And there's some great stuff going on here. Donnie Yen. And I haven't really seen much of Donnie Yen in general. This is something that for me has not been a big part of my movie watching life, is seeing a lot of Donnie Yen films. I'm aware of him. The most substantial role I've probably seen him in is in Rogue One, and I love him in that. But I think now that I've seen one of his Hong Kong action films, I'm really happy that I can kind of tick that one off the list. And I've really seen him and experienced what he can do in his prime. He'd done a few films before this, but I think his career really took off in the early 90s with stuff like Iron Monkey and so on. But he was trained by his mother, I believe, and many people were trained by his mother. And I forget where he grew up now, but I think he grew up in America. But regardless, that's, I'm not going to go into biography on everyone, but it was nice to hear some of that backstory about him, though I clearly haven't retained all of it because, when you listen to 3 commentaries for one movie, you don't at least I don't, my brain doesn't retain all that information, but I enjoy hearing about it at least. And so we see Donnie Yen fighting this guy who's initially on a motorbike, firing off his machine gun. And he's just got such a punchable face, this guy, you know. And people in the commentary, people saying he's such a nice guy and everything, and they're good friends, but he has a twat face, you know, that kind of you just want to punch the guy. But when he starts fighting and they go hand to hand, it's a really weird. I like how unorthodox it is, right? So if you just look at it without the sound, you know, he's doing all these weird, crazy faces, and it's like, okay, what the hell is this all about? And in Frank Jang's commentary, he said that this is kind of like a distraction technique. Like, this guy is purposely kind of just doing crazy shit to throw Donnie Yen off his game, and it's actually kind of a strategy as opposed to just a really weird choice by the actor. But just watch a small snippet of this with the dub, which is obviously, you know, these films weren't shot with sound, so it's someone in Cantonese dubbing the grunts of this American actor. So just listen to this. Now tell me that doesn't sound like Yoda having a fight in a Hong Kong martial arts movie. I'll run it again. This time close your eyes and just imagine it's Yoda fighting Donnie Yen. Am I onto something? Am I completely off base? I don't know. You tell me. Notes on a postcard. I just love the setting of that fight scene. There's another great fight scene in a hospital where Luke has been injured, and now he's like, you know, he's out of it and he's unconscious, and Cynthia's there to protect him, and a guy comes in to assassinate him, and now Cynthia's pulling him out of the bed, and that's a part of the fight sequence now, is her trying to maneuver his limp unconscious body like Weekend at Bernie's style. And then Donnie Yen comes in for the save and does this incredible like axe kick. It's just every little action beat is just so fun to watch unfold. And again, I feel like I could just keep talking about it. There's another bit where Cynthia's head gets rammed into a mirror. I'll just show you a clip of that, just to really feel the impact of it. Now, I'm assuming they rigged the mirror to crack like that. But in the commentary of Michael Wong, which is an archival commentary, the host of the commentary says, wow, how did they do that? And Michael Wong just laughs and goes, I think they just rammed a head into a bear. Like, he didn't say that verbatim, but he's just like, I think they just did it for real, you know. And it looks rough, you know, and they certainly didn't hold back as far as Cynthia was concerned in this film. And it leads to some memorable moments. But yeah, there is this 5% of me that feels a little bit uncomfortable with it, because I feel like with the culture, perhaps it might be a thing of kind of an issue where she was maybe pressured into doing things a bit too rough. I don't know, but again, you can't speak for someone like that when it might have been something that she was all on board for, and she wanted to do everything as you know, as just as much as all the guys could do it. You just don't know, you know, and unless she's there to speak for herself. But in the moment, I was like, oh god, they're really beating the shit out of her here, and I'm almost a bit uncomfortable with it, even though she comes off as a badass by the end of it. You know, it's not like she you know, she gets beaten down and that's it. You know, she certainly gets to kick ass and beat up all the men at the end of the movie. So there's certainly no stone left unturned as far as that's concerned, and her getting a kind of saving face back at the end. Now, there's another action sequence, and this is just me rattling off all the great action sequences in the film. There's a motorbike chase with Donnie Yen and two of the henchmen, and it's, again, some of the stuff that they're doing. There's a sequence where he's getting dragged along the street. There's an axe that, you know, his head almost goes into. And I'm going to try and not show a lot of clips here, just because you need to see it. And there's one specific beat where Mike Leader said in his commentary that that's when he kind of checked out of the movie, because it was a bridge too far. It was just way too much. When Donnie is on a motorbike and he's now dueling with the other guy on the motorbike with a sledgehammer and a shovel, and Donnie Yen takes a sledgehammer shot to the chest and it keeps on going. And I'm just thinking, really, that's the straw that broke the camel's back? Like, all these fights that we see in these movies, you know, people are getting punched and kicked in the face 50 times a fight, and it's like, they'd be knocked out, you know, 10 minutes ago. But I guess it was, you know, it makes me think of wrestling, where Triple H is weapon of choice was the sledgehammer, and it's disbelief, suspension of disbelief, right? You're just gonna kind of go along with it and kind of go, oh, brutal sledgehammer. Maybe if he bounced it off Donnie's head and he kind of just shook it off, and I could maybe see the point a bit better if that was what we were talking about. Then there's the final kind of showdown at this, like, I guess, CIA offices. There's all these big American flags around everywhere. And this is where there's just, like, people are going off in different directions and fighting. And I really appreciate it because there's a big fight at the end on the top of a building with Donnie Yen and Michael Woods. And during the time that this fight starts, Cynthia Khan is downstairs fighting Michael Wong with swords. And I was expecting that we would be intercutting from the rooftop fight with Michael Woods and Donnie Yen downstairs, back and forth with the sword fight. They don't do that at all. It's a really interesting choice. It just lets the Donnie Yen Michael Woods fight play out in its entirety. And it's a lengthy fight sequence that's full of, like, impactful slow motion hits, like incredible kicks from both guys. And you can see these guys are doing, because Yuen Woo-ping is just showing us all of it in a wide shot in slow motion. You've got the Kai Tak airport in the background with planes landing as they're fighting. Yeah, the kind of the time of day and the sun and it's overcast changes throughout, because obviously they filmed over a couple of days. And there's humor to it too. There's a bit where Donnie goes to punch Michael Woods and Michael blocks the punch, like, with his pecs. He just kind of, like, flexes his pecs in and blocks the punch. And I really want to just, like, credit this shot in the film, which I think is a little bit goofy, a little bit over the top, but also awesome, right? It's just like, it's a blend of, like, this is a bit cheesy, but it's also just like, fuck yeah, that's a cool shot. So Michael Woods gets knocked down, and I love how they built the fight where he's this big muscly guy and Donnie Yen's kind of a bit leaner and stuff. But, where the power comes into it, Donnie kind of makes up for it in his ferocity and the way he's attacking the big muscles of Michael, and Michael's, like, shaking his arm out, and it looks like really realistic, the way the fight's panning out. But Michael gets knocked down, and then he rises up, and it's this kind of like, now he's fucking ready to. Now Donnie's got to watch out, because now he's pissed, right? And it just look at the shot where he just and it's like the low angle. The lens is slightly different, so it really accentuates his size, and then just the way it comes up, like, oh man, it's such a cool shot. And it just tells so much of a story in that fight. And that, I think, is what makes this such an incredible fight sequence. And then once that one's done, we're back down again, and there's all sorts of stuff going on. It's just, this is one of the best action films I've ever seen. It's up there with Royal Warriors for me. And yeah, and I just like the characters. And I like I do feel like our witness, Luke, Simon Ewan Jr., the focus on him does taper off towards the third act, because he's kind of kept safely in hiding at that point. And we just have, like, just different clashes with Donnie and Cynthia and the bad guys. But he does kind of he does get involved in the fighting at the end. That kind of brings him round full circle, which I liked. But overall, for me, full marks. Loved everything about it. The score was great. I think Richard Ewan did the score. And it felt like after the previous three movies, they finally got it right. Like, it's a cool kind of synthy 80s score. There's a kind of electronic feel to it. A very 80s feel to it. But there's nothing, like, too repetitive, And also the use of slow motion. In Yes, Madam, at least, and in The Line of Duty 3, there are a number of slow motion shots, even in Magnificent Warriors, which is a different film, but another Hong Kong action film from the 80s. They would do slow motion to show you how a certain move was, just because it's so fast. I guess they want the audiences to really see that maybe the actor is doing it, or to see the finer kind of detail of whatever move it is. But when you slow down a piece of film after the fact, it doesn't look very good. There's kind of a stuttering effect. It's kind of, it's not as clean as a normal shot. And I don't like those kind of, to me, I call them like fake slow-mo shots or forced slow-mo shots. And oftentimes it comes, I guess, when the filmmakers realize that they need more time in that shot, so they slow it down artificially. And I hate it whenever I see it in a film. It's just not nice looking. Whereas if you plan for it and you set the camera to a different frame rate, which captures the slow motion with perfect clarity. It looks gorgeous. It's one of my favorite things in the world. It's just a good old-fashioned, legit slow-mo shot on celluloid. And clearly, when Yuen Woo-ping came in to direct this film, he wanted a lot of this, and it's evident right from the beginning, right from that there's a fight scene in Seattle with Donnie Yen. The first time we see Donnie Yen kick ass, and it's like, it sets the bar. Like, we're going to see a lot of these slow motion shots of these incredible kicks of Cynthia getting kicked in the face, but and that's there's so much slow motion in that rooftop fight at the end with Michael Woods, but it's warranted, and it's just so cool. I love all that slow motion stuff, and it's kind of a stylistic choice that sets it apart from the other three films, I think. And I do think it probably is the strongest film of the four. Now, obviously, there are future sequels. There are more In the Line of Duty films, more Yes, Madam movies, and I would love to see all of them. Even if they're lesser entries, I'd be intrigued to see how they stack up against the first four here, but as of now, these are the ones that Eureka have released. It might be because these all have, gorgeous 2K restorations that can be put on Blu-ray and look phenomenal, and maybe the other entries in the series don't have that yet. But yeah, I just, man, love the film. Really, really did. So let's get into the some of the extras here. The slipcover, another great piece. I really like just seeing all the details. Like, they got the ambulance on there, which highlights that. You've even got right there in the left of the title, you see Donnie Yen with the shovel and the bad guy with the sledgehammer. Even Luke's mother dangling from the rope there, which is one of the kind of moments of peril in the final fight sequence. Even the Tower of Seattle up at the top there. So there's lots of great detail and like a really dynamic shot there of Cynthia on the front. And I love the design of all of these and how you can look at them and they look really great together. It matches nice. There's different colors for each release. I just think that it's really, really nicely done. So the special features, obviously the new artwork by Darren Wheeling on the slipcover, 1080p presentation of the Blu-ray from the original theatrical cut from a brand new 2K restoration. And then we also have a 1080p HD presentation of the original export version from a brand new 2K restoration. Now, I want to talk about that very briefly. In Frank Jang's audio commentary, he mentions that there is an alternate opening to the film that only exists on I think he said the German VHS release. And he said, as far as he knows, there's been no other release that has that scene. And it's a scene that has Donnie Yen, this kind of Seattle cop, with his superior, and across the table is Cynthia Khan. And his superior says she's a Hong Kong policewoman who's going to be working with us on this drug case. She has experience in the case, and she's going to be a partner. And he's like, I don't need a partner, especially not a woman. And he's like, well, you're going to take her, and that's final. And that sets up the beginning of the movie. But, again, Frank, as far as I remember, in the commentary kind of says, like, it was only ever on the German VHS release. But the export version of this film on the Blu-ray has that scene at the beginning. So I flicked through it, and I can't see any discernible difference. There is a difference in running time of about a minute or so, and it has a new scene. So I don't know what's missing, but it seems almost virtually identical. Obviously, it's just an English dub on that one, whereas the main presentation of the film has Cantonese and English audio options, both in their original mono presentations. Newly translated subtitles, as you would expect. And then the three commentaries, which we'll get into in just a second. The three trailers I want to talk about, actually. Let's talk about the trailers for a second. So the first one we have is kind of an English export trailer, I think, which opens with a minute of highlights of Yes, Madam with Michelle Yeoh and Cynthia Rothrock. And it's like, Yes, Madam, and now Cynthia Khan in The Line of Duty 4. And it gives away pretty much every major action beat in the movie, as can be expected. But it's interesting how they opened with kind of a highlight reel from the first movie. The second is what I can only guess is an English trailer for like a American DVD release, perhaps. I'm not entirely sure. And it's super like 2000s, like the voiceover. Just listen to some of this.
In the undercover war against drugs, they operate unseen and above the law. In a world without rules, temptation is only a heartbeat away. When betrayal leads to murder, and murder leads to cover-up, an innocent bystander is drawn into their world, now on the run and running out of time. His only hope for survival is two cops with nothing to hide and nothing to lose.
I don't know. It just really reminded me of I don't know. It's just the cheesy voiceover, and then in that one they call it In the Line of Duty. It's chronologically confused about In the Line of Duty film titles, and then finally we have the Hong Kong trailer, which doesn't give away as much as I thought it would, but it does include the last stunts of the whole film, and I was like, man, there's the ending of the movie. They just gave it away in the trailer. But they tend to do these things. So those are the trailers. Then there is an archival interview with Donnie Yen, and then an archival Donnie Yen action featurette. So the interview is in English, and he kind of talks about his method of working as an action director, as a film director, as a martial artist, and how there's a difference between being a martial artist and being someone who can fight on film, and it's very different. And that there are some martial artists who turn up and think they can do it, and he's like, well, great, can you kick within an inch of the camera, and perfectly without touching it 20 times in a row? If you can't, then you need to go home and rethink your life. He's quite harsh about it, and that's the interview where he says that Cynthia was only good for one thing, just having courage.
Yuan Ping really she was not a martial artist. She wasn't the greatest physical athlete neither. The only credit I can give her was that she was very courageous and she worked hard, but it's all credit to Yuan Ping. Yuan Ping really, really worked with her.
And then you feel a little bit of an ego there for sure, but I mean, he certainly deserves it, I think, and can kind of back it up because he's incredible. But it was interesting. I liked it. It was a good 20-minute piece. There's a lot covered, but it's mainly he doesn't really talk about his career as much as he talks about kind of just his ideology on action filmmaking. And similar stuff is covered in the Donnie Yen action featurette, which is a very low quality featurette, but it's like a 15-minute thing in I'm not sure what language it's in, Cantonese maybe, but it's subtitled, and you see a lot behind the scenes stuff of him working on movies, being a director, being an action director, and going through again similar stuff, talking about Bruce Lee and his approach to directing action, and how many different ways you can do a punch, and how many different ways you can film it, what angles work the best and stuff. And he talks about how it's one thing to draw a storyboard, but really you should have the storyboard in your head, and you should be flexible to change that storyboard on the day when you're there directing. There's another interesting kind of story where he talks about Bruce Lee saying that in the beginning there was one way of doing a punch in a film, then there were many ways of doing a punch, and then there was the way of doing a punch that contains all of the methodologies of the previous punches in one. And he's talking about how he kind of likes to think of that in the way that he approaches just directing an action scene, taking everything he's learnt before and kind of putting it into one kind of final product. So I liked that they included those Donnie Yen featurettes. I would have liked some kind of archival interview with Cynthia Khan across one of these releases, but obviously it hasn't come to fruition. And then we have the 3 audio commentaries. So first of all, I mean, we have 2 brand new ones, one with Frank Zheng, the other with Mike Leader and Arna Venema. And then there's an archival commentary from 2001 with Hong Kong expert Stefan Hammond and lead actor of the film, Michael Wong. So 3 very interesting commentaries. I would like to not apologize, but I feel like in the past couple of reviews, I've almost kind of been negative about Frank Zheng's commentaries, and I've said that, well, the Michael Wirth one was much more interesting because he had someone to bounce things off of, and it gets a bit dry, and there's a few moments of dead air and stuff, but give this guy fucking credit, Frank Zheng. The amount of releases that he's working on, the amount of research he has to do, is it any wonder that there's a few moments of fucking dead air in these commentaries? Of course there is. And doing it alone must surely be more difficult than doing it with someone else. And he does a lot of these things alone. He does a lot of them with someone else. And I think the work that he is doing in terms of covering all these actors and kind of little pieces of Hong Kong film history, I think is just so invaluable. And I love hearing all that stuff. And I enjoyed his commentary on this one very much. is it a more lively listen when I jump over to the Mike Leader Anna Venema track? Yes, because there's banter there and there's a familiarity between the two, and that's infectious and enjoyable to listen to. But I also think that, I don't want to come across like I don't appreciate the Frank Jen commentaries, because I really do, and I think that they're really great, and I really enjoyed this one as well. And he kind of cleared up some things that I was wondering about, and similarly with the Anna Venema Mike Leader commentary, it's just more of a bouncier affair, and there's some funny stories that are told in those kind. I would highly recommend people listen to them, actually. And for me, listening to all of these commentaries, I think there's 9 across all 4 discs in this series, has really enriched my my knowledge of Hong Kong cinema. I'm certainly, no expert, and probably never will be. Wouldn't even call myself a moderate kind of expert. There's not really. I'm still at the very bottom rung of a very long ladder in terms of knowing things and knowing actors and knowing directors and things. But compared to where I was a few months ago, which was knowing absolutely nothing, I wasn't on the bottom rung of a ladder. I didn't even see that there was a ladder there to begin with. And now I'm on the bottom rung, and I feel like I've got a good footing there. And I think that's largely in part to Frank Jen, Mike Leader, and Anna Venema, and their great commentaries across all of these releases. So I really appreciate that. Then we have the third commentary, which is recorded in 2001, which I can deduce by the amount of time they say has passed since the film itself came out in 1989, 12 years, so 2001. And I couldn't help but wonder, for some reason, was this pre or post 9/11? It just was something that was rattling around my head when I thought of the year 2001. I mean, anyone who was, alive, cognizant in 2001. It's interesting because, I talked to some people online, and I realized, God, they were 2 or 3 years old when 9/11 happened. They weren't even cognizant, and that blows my mind. It makes you feel very old. But to anyone who was there and experienced it as it happened on that day, that year is colored by. When I think of the year 2001, it's like, oh, I wonder, 9/11, Anyway, so that commentary is really interesting. Stefan Hammond is kind of the host of the commentary, and Michael Wong is there to revisit this film that he made 12 years ago. And it's really, I don't know. I feel like Michael Wong was almost tricked into doing it, and he wasn't quite sure that he'd be there for the whole movie. He, maybe I'm overstating things here, but it's just about halfway through, he's like, "Wow, we're almost done, right?" And the host is like, "Well, not quite." And there are just times where Michael Wong is just watching the action and going, "Wow, would you look at that? Ah, damn!" Like he's just just remarking on the fight scenes, and then he's just saying, I'm just thinking about all these memories. I'm going inside my head and it's jogging my memory about things." And so the host has to really kind of guide him, and at times just comment on what's happening in the story and the movie. So, but I think that Michael Wong in general came across for me really likable, and that kind of dissipated any kind of stiltedness in the commentary, which is definitely there at times where the host really needs to drag some stuff out of Michael. Like, "Do you know where that location was?" And he's just like, No, I don't know. Like he even forgot that they filmed in Vancouver. I think it was in Canada. I think we filmed it. So, and he even says at one point, I don't think I've ever seen this film from start to finish before. He's like, "Well, you're at the premiere, right?" He's like, "Yeah, I think so." So he seems like a likable guy. But it was really interesting to me that it was this commentary, the 2001 Michael Wong commentary, is twice as old now as In the Line of Duty 4 was when he recorded that commentary. If you really think about that, 12 years versus 22. It's literally twice as old now as the film was when he recorded it. But it's interesting. I love that they included it. I think that's really cool, and I enjoyed listening to it quite a bit. And, he's, commenting about doing the fight scenes and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I actually really enjoyed what he had to say, but I feel like he wasn't really on the ball that much in terms of commenting on things. I think that the host did a really good job of trying to kind of drag some stuff out of him, but which makes it sound like it's a drag to listen to. It isn't really, but there's, I could really feel that it was kind of hard work at times to keep the track going, but because he was kind of so likable, I think it worked for me quite a bit. So that's the commentaries, that's the trailers, that's the Donnie Yen featurettes, that's the release. Damn, I wish I could keep. I don't know how long this video has turned out to be, but it says 50 minutes on my camera. I needed to express how much I loved this film, how much I loved this release. The transfer looks great. You know, the booklet. Okay, I haven't done the booklet. We can stretch this out a little bit longer. For anyone who's still watching, I don't know how you managed it, but on the inside, we have the same artwork as a slipcover, which is great. But you can obviously flip it around to an original poster, I believe it is. I really like this one. This is cool. We got the witness there, Luke being dragged away by Cynthia and Donnie, and then Michael Wong is off to the side, almost as a kind of hint of where his allegiance lies. He's kind of looking off in a different direction than the other characters. And we have the booklet. So the booklet has another essay by the same guy who's done essays on all of these releases, which to me have been kind of mixed bags for me. There's been a few things he said that I've kind of gone, well, I haven't quite agreed with, I suppose. So this one is Beating the Odds, Picking Sides with In the Line of Duty 4 by James Oliver. But there is some good stuff in this, you know. Talks about the director Yuen Woo-ping, and obviously he was the action director on very famous American films like The Matrix and Kill Bill movies. And there's some good kind of stills in there, look like kind of lobby card stills. And yeah, I mean, I liked it more than some of the other ones. But yeah, I don't know. I have to say some of the things that he said in some of these booklets has kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. But otherwise, you know, there's some good information there. There's definitely some good information if you want to know some more behind the scenes stuff. And he also talks about some of the other films in the series, the kind of future In the Line of Duty films, like In the Line of Duty 7's Sea Wolves, which, yeah. Anyway, so it's a good little booklet. You got some nice images there. And I like it when they include a bunch of like posters, In the Line of Duty 4, Part 4, Red Force, interesting. But I love all that promotional stuff. And it actually has this little page here, which is really nice, this double spread of like behind the scenes photos, which I don't think they included in any of the other booklets for these movies. But yeah. Oh, and the story that I was alluding to earlier was from this booklet. So it was actually the US National Security Council who had been caught using the profits from weapon sales to Iran to fund anti-communist activities in Nicaragua. So that was the story I was alluding to, where I think I said the CIA was pilfering money from a drug trade. That wasn't the case. It was a weapons sale and some illicit things going on there. But yeah, so that kind of real world context, I should say, I'll leave that one in for free, is included in the booklet too. So it's just such a well-rounded release in that respect. And I absolutely loved it. And I love all four of these movies. I love all four of these releases. Love the way they look together, from the spines to just the front covers. It's just a phenomenal run of releases from Eureka. I absolutely nailed it. Like, the 2K restorations look gorgeous. There's some fun audio commentaries with lots of information, behind the scenes stuff. I mean, you Google some of these movies. Some of them don't even have Wikipedia pages. You know, so to find trivia about these films is very difficult. But these commentaries, you've got hours worth of stuff. And I just think that that's, to me, is an invaluable source of information for people like me who love behind the scenes kind of stories and tidbits about these movies. I will leave it there. Yeah, In the Line of Duty 4, Witness, it's up there for me. It's one of my all-time favorite action films. And a great release, and there's not much more to say. I'm repeating myself at this point. There's probably even more I could have talked about. But to get it, watch it, I highly recommend it. I highly recommend all four of these films, but particularly, I would say Royal Warriors and In the Line of Duty 4 were my two favorites, but they're all fantastic. I really was expecting kind of schlocky stuff, I think, with these films, with some really cool fight scenes, but pretty, basic, even shitty stories. But I've really enjoyed all of them. And again, particularly this last one, it just got everything right. Everything to me was working. I mean, yeah, there's little things like movie mistake stuff you can see or whatever, or there's some obvious stunt doubling, but that stuff aside, I just thought it was pretty damn near perfect for an action film. Just delivered almost everything you could want from one. That's pretty much it. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for sticking around with this video for this long if you have. And I'll see you in the no doubt much shorter next Blu-ray review. Thanks for watching again.